Hey everyone, welcome back to KP Money Talks, where we simplify finances in Canada. And trust me, today's topic is a big one. With all of you amazing subscribers, we're like a giant family, tackling Canada's financial challenges together. So grab a coffee, settle in, because we're diving deep into a question on everyone's mind. Canada's household debt crisis. Are we headed for a recession? This is an 18-minute deep dive into why Canadians are drowning in debt. $3 trillion and counting. How it's tied to sky-high housing costs. And whether we're staring down a recession in 2025. Spoiler, it's serious. But there are ways to protect your wallet. Before we start, hit that like button if you're worried about debt or the economy. And subscribe with the bell icon to join our strong crew for weekly finance tips. Drop a comment right now. Have you felt the pinch of higher bills or mortgage payments? Okay, that's the big picture. But why should you, your neighbor, or anyone watching care about this debt crisis? Let me show you how it's already impacting everyday Canadians. Picture this. You're at the grocery store and your bill's up 20% from last year. Your mortgage payment just jumped at renewal and gas prices? Don't even get me started. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. Canadians are carrying a massive debt load. $3 trillion, sirs. As of early 2025, according to the Globe and Mail. That's more than the entire value of Canada's economy. We've got the highest household debt to GDP ratio among the world's top 10 economies, and it's making us vulnerable. Why does this matter? Because high debt doesn't just stress you out. It's a ticking time bomb for the whole economy. Posts on X are buzzing with warnings about bankruptcies and a possible recession, especially with US tariffs shaking things up. Today, we're unpacking what's driving this debt crisis, how it could lead to a recession, and, most importantly, what you can do to stay financially safe. We'll cover 5 big areas. What's fueling the debt crisis, how it's hitting your wallet, the recession risks, what experts are saying, and practical steps to protect yourself. Let's start with the why. Why are Canadians so deep in debt? It's not just overspending. It's a perfect storm of economic factors. Here's the breakdown. The number one driver is housing. In Canada, owning a home is like chasing a dream that keeps getting pricier. The Globe and Mail reports that nearly 75% of our $3 trillion household debt is tied to mortgages. Since 2011, our household debt to GDP ratio has outpaced the US and UK, hitting 99.58% in early 2025. Back in 2008, it was just 80%. Here's why. Home prices have skyrocketed. In 2009, the average home price was 9 times the average disposable income. By 2015, it was over 10 times, and it stayed there. In cities like Toronto and Vancouver, you're looking at $1.2 million for a decent house. Compare that to Winnipeg, where it's closer to $600,000, but still tough for most. To afford these homes, Canadians are taking on huge mortgages, stretching their budgets to the limit. The Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, says this makes our economy vulnerable to shocks, like a job loss or interest rate spike. If you're spending half your income on a mortgage, there's little room for anything else. But housing alone doesn't tell the full story. Another huge piece of this puzzle is how easy it's been to borrow money over the last decade. They said, for years, low interest rates made borrowing too easy. From 2010 to 2021, rates were historically low, so Canadians loaded up on debt. Credit cards, lines of credit, you name it. CMHC noted that by 2021, household debt was over 100% of GDP, a level the US pulled back from after 2008, while we kept borrowing. Think about it. Cheap loans meant bigger mortgages, new cars, or renovations. But now, with interest rates climbing to fight inflation, peaking at 5% in 2023, before easing to 2.75% in Q1 2025, those debts are harder to pay. Variable rate mortgage holders got hit immediately, and fixed-rate folks are facing shocks at renewal. And just when people were already borrowing heavily, costs kept going up. while incomes barely moved. That's our next factor. From 2021 to 2024, rent and mortgage costs jumped 24 to 56%, while food prices rose 24.5%, outpacing wage growth. Stats Canada says even the lowest earners saw disposable income grow by 9.4%. But it's not enough to keep up. Meanwhile, the wealthiest 20% hold over 2/3 of financial assets, widening the gap. This squeeze means many Canadians borrow just to cover basics: groceries, gas, childcare. Equifax Canada reported in February 2025 that non-mortgage debt per person hit $21,931, up 4.6% from 2023. Credit card debt alone climbed 7.8% in Q4 2024. Look at this chart. Mortgages are the lion's share of our debt. If you want more visuals like this, let me know in the comments. So now we know what's causing the debt crisis. But what does that actually mean for your household budget? Let's talk about the direct hit on your wallet. So, how does this debt crisis affect you? It's not just numbers on a screen, it's real-life pain. Let's break it down. If you've got a mortgage, you're probably feeling the heat. About 1 million mortgages are up for renewal in 2025. Many locked in at super low rates and from 2020. Equifax Canada says a quarter of renewals in Q4 2024 saw payments jump by over $150 a month. In Ontario and BC, some are facing hundreds more. For example, a $500,000 mortgage at 2% might have cost $2,100 a month. At 4.5% on renewal, that's closer to $2,700. A $600 jump. If your budget's tight, that's less for groceries, savings, or your kids' activities. The Bank of Canada says payments are rising less than feared, 8% in 2025 versus 14% expected. But it's still a shock. It's not just mortgages. Credit card and auto loan debt are climbing, especially for younger and lower income Canadians. Equifax reports a 46.1% jump in 90+ day non-mortgage delinquencies in Ontario, with Toronto hitting 2.06%. That means people are missing payments, a sign of deep financial stress. Why? High costs are forcing folks to lean on credit cards for basics. Seasonal spending in December 2024 hit a 2-year high, with average credit card purchases at $2,228. If you're carrying a balance at 20% interest, that's a debt trap waiting to happen. Those personal debts don't just hurt individuals. When enough households are struggling, the entire economy slows down. When you're paying off debt, you're not spending on vacations, new cars, or dining out. The Bank of Canada notes that high debt servicing costs cut consumer spending, which is 60% of our economy. Less spending means businesses struggle, jobs get cut, and the cycle worsens. Plus, if you lose your job, debt becomes a bigger burden. CMHC warns that widespread job losses in a downturn could make this crisis worse, like in the US in 2008. This is where things start to get serious. If debt levels keep rising and spending slows, could Canada actually tip into a recession? Here's what the experts are saying. Economists are split. Deloitte predicts a recession starting in Q2 2025, with GDP dropping 1.1% and 0.9% over 2 quarters. TD, BMO, and National Bank agree, citing US tariffs and weak productivity. But the OECD says we'll avoid a technical recession, with flat growth instead. RBC, CIBC, and Scotiabank also lean towards slow growth, not a full downturn. Here's the catch. Even without a technical recession, 2 quarters of negative GDP, it feels like one. RBC notes real per-person output has dropped in 6 of the last 7 quarters, and unemployment's creeping up, hitting 6.9% in April 2025. Predictions are one thing, but here's why high debt could make any downturn even more painful. High household debt is like gasoline on a fire. The Bank of Canada's 2025 Financial Stability Report warns that a prolonged trade war with the US, think 25% tariffs on our exports, could trigger a year-long recession with 9% unemployment and a 5% GDP drop. Mortgage arrears could hit 0.5%, worse than 2008, but not as bad as the 1990s. Why? If you're stretched thin on debt, a job loss or higher interest rates could force you to miss payments or even face bankruptcy. Exposts, Like one from unsnarky white guy warned of rising bankruptcies as mortgages renew at higher rates. And as if that wasn't enough, we're facing even bigger threats from outside Canada, starting with US tariffs. The US trade war is a huge wildcard. Canada exports 75% of its goods to the US. So their tariffs on our lumber, steel, and oil hurt big time. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce says this could shrink GDP by 2.6%, or $1,900 per person. Add a weaker loonie, and everything from groceries to tech gets pricier. Other risks? A slowing housing market with fewer housing starts, and global economic shocks. The Bank of Canada says our banks are strong, with buffers to absorb losses, but high debt leaves us exposed if things go south. This graph shows unemployment creeping up. Scary, right? If you want more charts like this, tell me in the comments. To understand how this all plays out, we need to hear from the people who study these risks every day. The Bank of Canada, CMHC, and leading economists. Governor Tiff Macklem says, Canada's financial system is resilient, but the trade war and high debt are big risks. The bank's 2025 report says households have less debt relative to income than last year, thanks to lower interest rates, down to 2.75% in Q1 2025. But if tariffs stick, we could see a recession with higher unemployment and mortgage defaults. They're optimistic about banks holding up, with strong capital buffers, but warn that trade-sensitive industries, like auto or lumber, could face job losses, hitting 15% of bank loans. That's a ripple effect to your community. The Bank of Canada has its concerns, but housing experts are sounding the alarm even louder. The CMHC's Aled Ebiorworth calls our debt levels a vulnerability. He says fixing housing affordability is key. More supply, better rental options, less pressure to buy. Without this, first-time buyers will keep taking on huge mortgages, fueling the crisis. CIBC's Benjamin Tal agrees, calling it an affordability crisis. He says we need to rethink home ownership as the only path, pushing for more rentals to ease the debt burden. And economists? They're split, but some are predicting a recession sooner rather than later. Deloitte's outlook is grim, predicting a recession by mid-2025 due to trade shocks and weak productivity. They see business investment dropping 11.5% in Q2 2025. But they also see a silver lining. This crisis could push Canada to fix productivity and diversify trade beyond the US. The OECD is more upbeat, saying we'll avoid a recession but face flat growth and 7.3% unemployment by 2026. They warn that low-income households spending heavily on housing are most at risk. Now, all of this can feel overwhelming. But here's the good news. You do have options. Let me walk you through 6 steps you can take right now to protect your finances. Tip 1. Tackle high-interest debt. First, start with credit cards or lines of credit. Those 20% interest rates are killers. Use the debt avalanche method. Pay off the highest interest debt first while making minimum payments on others. For example, paying an extra $100 a month on a $5,000 credit card balance at 20% can save you hundreds in interest. Check out debt consolidation options with your bank, but always read the fine print. Tip 2. Build an emergency fund. With recession risks, an emergency fund is your safety net. Aim for 3 to 6 months of expenses in a TFSA. Say $6,000 for basic costs. Start small. Cut 1 coffee a week, that's $20 a month. Apps like Wealthsimple can automate savings. If a job loss hits, you'll be ready. Tip 3. Shop smarter to beat. Inflation. With food and rent up 24%, shop strategically. Buy Canadian to avoid US tariff costs. Think local apples over US oranges. Use apps like Flip for sales or PC Optimum for points. Bulk buy non-perishables at Costco, but only what you'll use. Tip 4. Revisit your budget. Try the 50-30-20 rule. 50% for needs, 30% for wants, 20% for savings or debt. Apps like Mint track where your money's going. If your mortgage jumped $200, Cut back on dining out or streaming subscriptions. Small tweaks add up. Tip 5. Explore side hustles. Extra income can ease debt stress. Try freelancing on Upwork, driving for Uber, or selling on Etsy. Even $500 a month can cover a mortgage hike or boost savings. Just report it to the CRA to avoid tax headaches. Tip 6. Stay informed and get help. Keep up with trade talks and rate changes on Canada.ca or X. If you're struggling, talk to a financial advisor or credit counselor. They can negotiate with creditors or suggest relief programs. Don't go it alone. Those 6 steps are your best defense against Canada's debt crisis. And as we wrap up, here's the bigger picture and why staying resilient matters now more than ever. So are we headed for a recession? It's not certain. But the signs, $3 trillion in debt, US tariffs, rising unemployment, say we need to be ready. Canada's economy is resilient with strong banks and government support like $90 billion in tariff relief funds. But high household debt, especially mortgages, makes us vulnerable. The good news is that you've got power. By tackling debt, building savings, and staying informed, you can weather any storm. This channel's here to help. Our 39 million subscribers are proof we're stronger together. If this video helped you understand the debt crisis, smash that like button and subscribe to keep up with Canada's money moves. Thanks for watching, Canada. Stay smart with your money. And I'll see you in the next one.